What's up, Rasmanites? How you doing? Well, today I want to start something that I think is going to be a weekly series for me. Because I have the ability, once again, thanks to this new gorgeous 1080p camera of mine, to film easily. So, I have the ability to do episodes a lot more quickly than I did the past few months with my old 720p flip. And one of the reasons that I don't do as many wrestling videos as some of the other YWCers out there is because it was a lot harder for me to film. Well, that's no longer the case. And with me having a 48-hour schedule, I think it would be a great idea to have every day of the week be devoted to my entertainment, meaning Monday, Wednesday, sometimes Saturday if there's something big going on, but then have Fridays be my wrestling day. That way everything that I do and everything I love gets an equal amount of focus. So, what I want to do for this weekly series is do something that I was kind of inspired by from Chairshot Reality. I don't know how many of you out there watch Chairshot Reality. It's a show on WrestleZone.com hosted by Justin LaBarra and Josh Eisenberg, who are two wrestling insiders. And basically it's just them giving their opinions about everything in the business. And I'm not going to do that because that would be a blatant rip-off of their show. Although, if I was going to joke around, I would say, reality, you guys couldn't come up with your own name, really. I've been using that name for almost 3 years on YouTube. Having reality at the end of my name, really. But anyway, no, I don't own the word. I'm just joking around. But anyway, I'm not going to copy their entire show because that would be a blatant ripoff and people would call me on it and I could probably get a lot in trouble for it. But the one segment that they do is something called Please Vince. What Please Vince is seeing stuff that's going on in professional wrestling that you feel like needs to either stop or change, or you want to see something evolve out of something. It's basically you saying to Vince McMahon what needs to happen from a fan's perspective. Because let's face it, if we the fans don't speak up, the wrestling product isn't going to be what we want it to be at all. So that's what this new weekly segment's going to be. It's going to be my version of Please Vince. Now, that's what the name of the episode's going to be called today, is my version of Please Vince. And the reason for that is simply because I don't know what to call it. I want you, the wrestling fans out there who watch these wrestling videos that I put up, I want you to help me name my Please Vince. What should the name of my Please Vince be called? But yeah, for today, for right now, until we get a name for it, this is my version of Please Vince today on the Razman's Reality. Alright, so today's episode is going to focus on 4 things, all basically having to do around feuds and pushes, so I hope you enjoy it. First up, Daniel Bryan. Please, WWE brass, don't drop the ball on Daniel Bryan. You had the perfect setup going on with Daniel Bryan coming out after Money in the Bank last year and saying that he was going to cash in Money in the Bank at WrestleMania. Why is this the perfect setup? Because Daniel Bryan, even though we all know, the entire IWC/YWC, we all know how phenomenal Daniel Bryan is. Daniel Bryan is one of the 5 greatest wrestlers in the world today, bar none. There is absolutely no disputing that whatsoever. But the problem is that the majority of WWE fans aren't fans of the entire sport. That's just the way it is. If you ask a WWE fan what's TNA, what's ROH, they're not going to have a clue what you're talking about. So WWE did the perfect thing when they had Daniel Bryan come out after his Money in the Bank win and say he was going to cash in at WrestleMania, because it enabled Daniel Bryan to do something that was commonplace in the 80s and in the 90s, but just basically disappeared with the 2000s and the current era. And that's something called a slow build. That is a guy coming out and slowly becoming credible as a main eventer. It's the opposite of a Jack Swagger. It's the opposite of a Sheamus, although they're doing much better with him the second time around. I love Sheamus as a face, but I'll save that for another episode. But you're not going to have that kind of syndrome happening with Daniel Bryan by having this slow build-up and this slow push. However, they kind of screwed the ball up a little bit, because when Mark Henry came out and tried to put Daniel Bryan in the Hall of Fame, it created new motivation for Daniel Bryan to want to become world champion sooner than WrestleMania. And that's why we saw him in vain cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase 2 weeks ago on SmackDown. And that is why we saw him in vain lose the world title match on this past week's SmackDown, Tuesday. Now, was I expecting Daniel Bryan to win? No. Because they're not done with the Big Show Mark Henry feud after the way the Big Show Mark Henry match ended at Survivor Series. You knew they were going to have one more match. And when Daniel Bryan wins the world title, it's going to be a thing where it makes sense for him to win the world title. Sorry, I just can't get myself comfortable. I'm trying to cut down on movement with this camera because it has a low shutter speed, so just bear with me. So, anyway, my point is, I didn't expect Daniel Bryan to win. But he shouldn't have even been in that match. They were doing the perfect thing with him. They were having him slowly become relevant. But because you're running out of guys to feud with Mark Henry, you don't want to put Sheamus in that spot right now. Because putting Sheamus in that spot would negate Daniel Bryan being your anointed next world champion by being Mr. Money in the Bank. So because there's a lack of guys for Mark Henry to feud with between now and WrestleMania until Daniel Bryan takes the title, they had to push him a little bit sooner. So what I'm asking WWE to do is Okay, you had to have Daniel Bryan get in the main event a little bit sooner than planned. Just don't screw it up. Just don't have somebody from SmackDown like Sheamus, as much as I like him, and as much as he deserves to be in the main event scene. He could win the Royal Rumble, sure, but he shouldn't. Not if he's going to stay on SmackDown. You can't have a SmackDown superstar win the Royal Rumble, because if you have a SmackDown superstar, the other guy that fit the bill would be Wade Barrett. You could have Wade Barrett come out because of the way he's been pushed and win the Royal Rumble. But don't have, or Cody Rhodes, that's the third one. Keep coming up with SmackDown names, just for an example. But the thing is, all those guys are great. But you already chose Daniel Bryan to be the next guy you push, with him winning Money in the Bank last year. And you're doing a good job with it. Don't screw it up. If you have somebody else from SmackDown win the Royal Rumble and it gets turned into a triple threat match, then doubt starts to creep in and you start to believe that Daniel Bryan is going to get screwed over. Do not let that happen. Do not let all the great things that you've done with the CM Punk angle since September, that you've done with Twitter and YouTube, although you're really overdoing it with Twitter, but I'll save that for another episode because I have a lot to say about that. But the point is, you're finally paying attention to your adult fans by having CM Punk as your WWE champion, by having Daniel Bryan next in line to be world champion. You're putting it on good workers and great wrestlers. You're giving the real, true wrestling fans what they want. For God's sake, don't screw it up. There should be nobody that is the next World Heavyweight Champion other than Daniel Bryan. Mark Henry needs to hold that title until WrestleMania. Daniel Bryan can still cash in Money in the Bank at WrestleMania because you've accomplished what you needed to accomplish. You felt like Daniel Bryan wasn't relevant enough as a main event player for when he cashes in. Fine. I agree with that to a certain extent. So by putting him in other matches, having him lose, you accomplished what you needed to accomplish. You made him credible. Now just keep him in the main event scene. Have him feud with a top heel like Cody Rhodes or Wade Barrett. Help two guys for the price of one. But for God's sake, don't have anybody between now and WrestleMania win that world title for Mark Henry other than Daniel Bryan. The next thing I want to talk about is Zack Ryder. Now, a few months ago when I had separated my wrestling from this channel and I had it on a separate channel, the reason I did that, I actually did it twice. I was under two different names. I had The Razman Wrestling, and then I closed down that channel because I was going through a lot of personal things at the time and didn't have time to do two channels. But when I came back and decided to start making wrestling videos again, I just started a new channel called Razman Wrestling because I waited too long to be able to reopen that channel. And then as time went on, I realized that all of you never really got mad at me for leaving, and you wanted me to keep doing wrestling videos, and there was no point in me having two channels when I can just do both things here, like what I've been doing. But anyway, my point was, back when I had two channels, I did a video on Zack Ryder. And back then, I was not a fan of Zack Ryder. And the points that I made then were, you're having Zack Ryder's push come out of him being an internet darling, him doing YouTube videos to get himself over, and you've done nothing with him in the ring. And he's just annoying and I don't see anything in him. But exactly what I said WWE needed to do in that video, which was put Zack Ryder in the ring, let him show if he has any ring talent before you decide to push him. That's exactly what they've done. And ever since that's happened, I admit Zack Ryder is growing on me. I don't know if it's just the fact that he knows that wrestling fans are smart by the true Long Island story, and he knows that wrestling fans want to know a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes, or if he just has a lot more in-ring talent than I thought he did. Whatever the case is, I really like Zack Ryder right now. So my next point is, just like Daniel, don't screw up Zack Ryder. You didn't have Zack Ryder win the United States Championship in Madison Square Garden at Survivor Series. And I get why. Because you didn't want anything to take away from the focus of The Rock's return to the ring. I get that. But you cannot have this whole Zack Ryder getting a United States title shot thing turn into another anonymous Raw general manager. And yes, I give credit to Justin LaBar from Chairshot Reality because he did put it that way first. But I couldn't think of a better way to put it because his point is the same as mine. If you drag this angle out too long, it's going to turn into another anonymous Raw general manager angle. You need to finish this angle off before people start to wonder, am I ever going to get a payoff? Is Zack Ryder ever going to get the United States title? You want to do it for 3 or 4 weeks, you want to keep people in suspense, fine. But it cannot, under any circumstances, go past TLC. Justin LaBar said it first, but he was absolutely right in what he said, and I needed to reiterate it because it's exactly how I feel. Don't drag this Zack Ryder angle on for too long. And there are a few more things that I could talk about in this episode, but because I had to spend so much time explaining what the concept is, this video's run a little bit longer than I would like it to already. So we're going to end it with one more thing, and I'll have plenty more to say next week. The final thing we're going to talk about is don't screw up CM Punk. Because there's good and bad by us getting what we want, and that's CM Punk being the main focus of Raw, CM Punk being WWE Champion. The good focus is that the right guy is holding the belt. It's not John Cena, it's not a guy that the majority of us can't stand. The danger of it is, though, is that because it's WWE and because they want merchandise sales and they want the little kids to get behind the champion too, the danger of it is they'll start to water down CM Punk. They'll start to not let CM Punk speak his mind as much. And if you do that, you're going to ruin CM Punk's character, and you're going to discredit everything you built up to since September. You have to continue to let CM Punk be CM Punk. Don't change a thing about what you've done and what you established. The reason people are so behind Punk and the reason that he got the biggest pop of the night next to Zack Ryder and The Rock at Survivor Series, and the reason why people were so excited to see him become champion is because they want the reality, no pun intended. They want the realism, and they want great wrestling, which is everything that CM Punk brings. For God's sake, you cannot, under any circumstances, turn CM Punk into a goody two-shoes face like you try to make John Cena out to be, even though only the little kids see him that way. If you do that to CM Punk, you will ruin everything. So please, don't let that happen. So I hope you all enjoyed this. segment. I hope you think that the idea is a good idea, because I really think it has huge potential. And I want you guys not only to come up with the name and help me figure out what to call the segment, but I want you to use the Razman's Reality Facebook fan page, which is always down below in each of the description boxes, and it's in my credits. I want you all to give me questions, topics for this. I want you all out there to let me know what you, the wrestling fans, want to hear my take on. And I will try as much as I can to work that into these weekly shows every week. This is reality according to the Razman. And Razman style, it's not just a catchphrase, but a way of life.